That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, my dudes, we are going to be going through, we are going to be recapping our top 24 wide receiver rankings and tiers for this upcoming season. Now, we're not talking about all 24 wide receivers in this video. Now, we already have talked about the top 18. We're going to be rounding out the top 24, but I've said it so many times before. I mean, we need to make sure that we're diving a little bit deeper, providing real analysis, not necessarily just going, oh, here's a list. That doesn't do anybody any good. I want y'all to see my thought process behind the rankings. I want y'all to get a sneak peek, because I know the majority of people watching this video right now, they already have access to my rankings because it's the easiest thing to ever get. And that all you have to do is come out and just hang out with us pretty much. Or you can go do your own thing and get in your own fantasy drafts. But where we are drafting this offseason is we are drafting on Underdog Fantasy. And when you use promo code FLOCK and deposit $10, Underdog Fantasy adds $25 into your account. But more importantly, you get our 2021 rankings, our 2021 tiers, our 2021 draft guide, our 2021 dynasty rookie draft guide. So you're getting hundreds of pages of information, as well as all our rankings, as well as you're getting paid $25 to get in fantasy drafts. And I'm sure y'all have seen how much fun I've been having on Underdog Fantasy every single night where we've been live drafting. And I will admit, this may have been a bad idea to do this partnership because I mean, in my regular day when I'm supposed to be going through making videos, making podcasts for Patreon, I find myself just nonstop underdog draft after underdog draft after underdog draft. I can't get enough, especially when I found out that the public lobbies are a lot easier than the Flock private leagues that we have. I mean, those public lobbies seem very, very easy to beat. So I'm just trying to get as much money as I can right now. But of course, I'm not advising you to do that. And anyway, let's just go through, let's recap our top 24 receivers right now. And let's start it off with Devontae Adams at 1, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Allen Robinson, Robert Woods, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Julio Jones, and now going into our wide receiver 19. We are going to have DJ Moore. Okay, so here with DJ Moore, this is a receiver that I think if you're just talking about his pure talent level, you would have to have him a lot higher than this. I mean, this is someone that, yes, came into the NFL back in 2018. He came into the NFL at the same time of a Nick Chubb. He came in with the same class of a Courtland Sutton. And at the same time, with the DJ Moore, he's still incredibly young. It seems like he's been around forever. But DJ Moore got drafted at 20 years old coming out of Maryland. He's only 24 years old, which is ridiculous. So I really want to be looking at DJ Moore and what we have had so far in his career. And I want to be putting it into some context and understanding. He played his rookie season at 21, his second year at 22, his third year at 23. So those numbers that you're going to see, we have to naturally understand that they're a lot more impressive than what you would have from a 27, 28-year-old wide receiver that you know is already near the top of his craft. This is a player that's going to continue to get better as his career goes on. And yes, I will admit, he had a bad year last year. I don't want to say a bad year. He had a bad year for DJ Moore standards, though. And that if we go through, if you look at 2019, this is the main season that I want to key on here. DJ Moore came out and he actually was the wide receiver 14 on a points per game basis. He was the wide receiver 14 at 22 years old. Now, what was crazy about this is he did this with volume. We know a lot of the times when you have those younger receivers producing to an elite level, they do so mainly with their efficiency. They're not able to get on the field that often. And at the same time, they're mainly breaking off a few long plays. And that's how they're going to the very top of fantasy charts. But here with DJ Moore, it's impressive that he did it with volume because we know volume's the number one thing that we are wanting to chase. And it's even more impressive considering the fact that he did so with Kyle Allen. Now, I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, are big fans of Kyle Allen. Personally, I am not. I think it's kind of crazy that people want to view him as an average quarterback in the NFL. He's a horrendous quarterback in the NFL. He is someone that, I mean, is clearly a career level backup, has no reason to ever start an NFL game outside of an injury. And DJ Moore posted the wide receiver 14 season. And this could have been better because y'all know something that we talk about all the time is the fact that what you really want to be betting on, and it's literally a cheat code in fantasy football. I will say a lot more people are getting smarter with it. but you want to be trying to identify the player that's coming off the season where they had a lot of volume, but the touchdown rate that they had was a little bit lower than you'd expect on average, because we know touchdown rate, that's going to be volatile. That's going to go up and down, up and down. Now, of course, you're going to have a few outliers season to season. We know that there are always going to be guys on either one end of the spectrum or the other. Like a Devontae Adams, you can always assume that he's going to have a ridiculous touchdown rate given what we have seen over a large sample. But here with the DJ Moore, this is a player that in 2019, when he was the wide receiver 14 at 22 years old, he actually averaged less than 0.3 touchdowns per game off of 9 targets. Now, yes, maybe you make the argument that DJ Moore is someone running closer to the line of scrimmage, and he's never necessarily going to be a very high touchdown score, which I'm completely fine if you want to make that argument. I may even agree with you. But at the same time, I will say, if you look from a macro sense on what you see with NFL receivers, is when you get this type of volume, for you to go out there and for you to score that little, it's extremely surprising. It's frankly unlucky. So I would say that if we saw some positive touchdown variance from DJ Moore, he could have been a top 10 receiver this year based on the amount of volume that he had and what he did with those targets. And we have to keep this in context. He was 22 years old. He was playing with Kyle Allen. Now, the next year, yes, he takes a significant fall off. So he actually falls from the wide receiver 14 to the wide receiver 29. But a big thing is, he only goes from averaging 15.5 fantasy points per game to 14.1. We just know that last year was really weird. Wide receiver 20 to like wide receiver 36, they were literally almost identical in terms of their points per game. So I'd almost rather be looking at points per game, even though it's a little harder to go through and just put that into context. But yeah, he finishes with 14.1 points per game. He comes close to 8 targets a game again. And you actually see on less targets, he averages about the same amount of receiving yards a game, even slightly more. So you're seeing DJ Moore operate a little bit further downfield in a different role that we haven't necessarily seen. And now what we have is we have a massive quarterback upgrade coming into the offense. Massive probably isn't the best word for it, but I will say a lot of people trying to tell me that Teddy Bridgewater is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. Guys, I have some bad news for you, to be completely honest. But here, Joe Brady, Matt Rule, the people in charge of the Carolina Panthers, creating their game plan and going through and operating with it, they signed off on the fact that Teddy Bridgewater was so bad and did not fit what they wanted to do whatsoever, that they were willing to pay his entire contract, give him away for nothing. Yes, he got traded for like a 5th round pick, but when you're paying the entire contract before you make that trade, it's essentially as if you're trading absolutely nothing whatsoever. And it's more so like he's getting cut. So they essentially cut Teddy Bridgewater, I want to say, and they go out and they trade a 2nd round pick to bring in Sam Darnold. So they definitely think that Sam Darnold is going to be the better quarterback on the roster. And I will say that I think that 2021 may be the best quarterback play that DJ Moore has ever had in his NFL career. And I know it's the craziest thing to ever possibly say, but we just look at the fact that this team's committed to Sam Darnold, and what you saw with Ryan Tannehill leaving Adam Gase so long ago. And we go through and understand that, while yes, DJ Moore technically played with Cam Newton some. Trust me, if he was playing with prime Cam Newton, I would look like the dumbest person ever for saying this. But he was playing with Cam Newton with his arm almost falling off. He was playing with an atrocious train wreck Cam Newton. Not very good Cam Newton, because at one point, Cam Newton, I don't want to say was the best quarterback in the NFL, but he was right up there. He was at least a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Now, with DJ Moore, I'm going to be expecting him to get closer back to what we had his 2nd year in the NFL. I'm a little concerned about the overall offense, kind of bringing in Terrace Marshall, Robbie Anderson establishing himself in that role, Christian McCaffrey coming back as well. Now, of course, they lose Curtis Samuel, but I think honestly the additions of Christian McCaffrey as well as Terrace Marshall to this offense maybe outweigh the loss in Curtis Samuel. So DJ Moore, it's more so a bet on the talent rather than the bet on the situation. But I'm really a fan of DJ Moore. So now let's go to our wide receiver 20 in T. Higgins. Now, this is kind of, I don't want to say showboating right here, but I love to see it. Okay, y'all remember months ago me coming out here and saying T. Higgins was the wide receiver 1 that you wanted for the Cincinnati Bengals this season. Of course, if you're playing in a dynasty format, go get Jamar Chase. But T. Higgins is the guy that you want this year. We went out, we looked at the games that you had a crossover of Joe Burrow and T. Higgins starting at the same time, because T. Higgins didn't really get used in the starter role the first 2 weeks of his NFL career. Completely understandable. They didn't have a preseason. They didn't have a rookie OTAs. They didn't have an extended training camp last year. We all have to remember. So it took until week 3 for T. Higgins to even get into the starting lineup. But once he did, he was a top 10 receiver with Joe Burrow on a points per game basis at 21 years old. Now I'll say we obviously can't rank him there, obviously, due to the fact that it was a small sample thing. I believe there were only 7 or 8 games in that sample. And at the same time, I mean, they were just throwing the ball way too much, where it kind of has to regress. It's like how you're looking at Dak Prescott, where yeah, you can look at the Dak Prescott Dallas Cowboys splits from last year and you can get all excited, but then you have to come down to earth and come back to reality and understand that they were playing at a completely unsustainable rate. There's no way they're close to that again this upcoming season. So it's almost the same thing here with the Cincinnati Bengals. But a big thing is, I know a lot of people want to say, well, Mason, Jamar Chase is coming in. Jamar Chase is going to steal those targets from T. Higgins. Well, you actually have Giovanni Bernard and AJ Green. AJ Green, obviously more important. They are both leaving the offense. And if you look at the amount of volume that both of those players got in the receiving game last year, there are more than enough targets to go around where T. Higgins can actually expand his target share even with Jamar Chase coming in. Higgins was a great receiver prospect coming out of Clemson. At the same time, he has that same type of chemistry with a Joe Burrow. I hate hearing people go, well, Mason, Joe Burrow, didn't you not know that he played in college with Jamar Chase? There's the shower narrative there. Don't you have to take that into account? You realize he played in the NFL with T. Higgins, right? You realize that T. Higgins has been his teammate way more recently than what you had with the Jamar Chase. Just because they were younger makes it a little more important for the Joe Burrow Jamar Chase connection. So no, I don't necessarily want to fall in line with that. Instead, I would just go, hey, T. Higgins, super young, super talented, in a high volume passing offense. We're going to have him here at wide receiver 20. And what makes me feel really good about this is you're looking around and now you're seeing other people, and you're seeing the majority of drafters right now take T. Higgins over Jamar Chase, when last month they were taking Jamar Chase almost a round ahead of T. Higgins. So I'm glad. I don't want to say we got that right, because obviously we need to see the season play out. But if you would have been listening to us a month ago, you would have had a massive discount. So now let's go to another year 2 receiver. Let's go over to Brandon Aiyuk. And here with Brandon Aiyuk, we're going to have him ranked as wide receiver 21. And this is another second-year player that was extremely impressive his first year in the NFL with subpar quarterback play. And that's to say it kindly. And with Brandon Aiyuk, if you look at the healthy games, because obviously you have to kind of take out the games where Aiyuk left early with an injury. He was plagued with injuries his rookie season. He actually posted a wide receiver 1 year as a rookie. And what is important about that, at least in terms of trying to scale it back and not necessarily expecting that to happen again this upcoming season, is the fact that George Kittle was also out those games. We can safely project George Kittle to see the majority of targets in this offense this upcoming year. So I'll expect the volume to go down for Brandon Aiyuk, who actually averaged close to 8 targets a game last season. But at the same time, what I really like about this connection that he's going to have with Trey Lance is what we saw with Trey Lance in college, and what you really know about those mobile quarterbacks that also have a big arm. Look at a Josh Allen. Those are guys that are not going to be checking the ball down very often. And I have said this time and time again. Yes, Deebo Samuel is listed as a receiver. He's listed as a receiver on fantasy drafts. But the position Deebo Samuel plays and the routes that Deebo Samuel runs, he is not a traditional wide receiver. He is someone that is running exclusively close to the line of scrimmage. If you look at his average depth of target through 2 years in his NFL career, this is someone that is at the bottom of the league back-to-back seasons. And at the same time, you look at his average depth of target, it is closer to running backs than it is receivers. It is the most ridiculous thing that you will ever see. And obviously this is due to Kyle Shanahan going out, seeing the role that Deebo Samuel would play best and implementing him in that role. And nothing against Deebo Samuel. We're just trying to figure out who's going to mesh better with the new quarterback in Trey Lance. And with Trey Lance, I'm going to be expecting him to look further downfield, because if you have a Jimmy Garoppolo in the game, I mean, I think Deebo Samuel is literally a perfect option, because what's going to happen is with a quarterback like that, they're going to go through their progressions. They're going to see if they have anything deep. If that's not there, they're going to look for their check down guy. They're going to look for the guy like Deebo Samuel that's only 2 yards away from the line of scrimmage, essentially throwing it to, I don't want to say a running back running out of the backfield, but in that same area of the field. Whereas with the Trey Lance, what we have to understand is it's very similar to what we have with Josh Allen. If he goes through his progressions, we know that he's going to be a very aggressive passer. It's almost like Russell Wilson earlier in his NFL career as well. What they're going to do is they can extend the amount of time that they have to make that throw. So if that pass isn't initially there, they can actually just kind of extend it, either wait and see if the wide receiver can get open further downfield, or they can rush for the first down on their own right. So I'm sitting here thinking that Brandon Aiyuk, who actually operates more as a traditional wide receiver, I think he is a significantly better fit than what you have with a player like Deebo Samuel. So now let's go back to the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's go back to the situation in Ja'Marr Chase, who I was previously calling a massive avoid in fantasy drafts, but he's actually fallen a decent amount. He's fallen like, I don't want to say a full round, but I was consistently seeing him go in the middle of the fourth. And now I recently got him in the middle of the fifth on one of those underdog drafts. It was a public league. So I'll say I think the public leagues are not as good as what you have with the flock private leagues that we do in the streams every night. I think those flock private leagues are actually a lot harder to win. But regardless, with a Ja'Marr Chase here, you're going through and you're looking at him go, well, yeah, he's clearly the best receiver prospect in this year's NFL draft. I mean, you go back to what he did at LSU. And I'm going to keep this very brief because I know so many people have said the same exact stat about a Ja'Marr Chase. So I'm not being original here in the slightest. Y'all have all heard it a million times. Ja'Marr Chase was more productive than Justin Jefferson. If you look at yards, if you look at touchdowns, if you look at yards per target, he was a better receiver at LSU than Justin Jefferson was at a younger age. He had more yards and more touchdowns at 19 years old in the same exact offense with Joe Burrow compared to what you had with Justin Jefferson that same year. Justin Jefferson, 20 years old during that time. So, of course, that just kind of puts into context the talent of a receiver that Ja'Marr Chase is. Now, keep in mind, this is also someone that hasn't played football for 12 months, so I don't want to necessarily say that it's that surprising that we got reports that he is not necessarily performing up to expectation at camp. I'll say I mainly want to be ignoring the beat reporters regardless, even if it kind of proves us right in this instance. So I was previously saying to avoid Ja'Marr Chase because, well, yeah, we have him ranked at wide receiver 22. A lot of drafts, he was actually going at like wide receiver 18, wide receiver 17. But now I'm seeing him fall closer to where we have him ranked. So maybe we have to walk it back that Ja'Marr Chase isn't an avoid player if he's going to continue to fall in ADP. It's very similar to how at the beginning of the offseason when Josh Jacobs was going in the third round, I was screaming, avoid, 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 never draft him in a million years. But now that he's going in the fifth, and I swear to God, I'll post a screenshot on Twitter, but I got Josh Jacobs in the sixth round of an underdog draft. The sixth round. So, of course, I'll hate a player until they fall to a certain point where then we have to go, okay, well, yeah, I guess we draft them now. And maybe that's kind of coming with a Ja'Marr Chase. Okay, so now our next guy, you're not going to draft him on underdog if you're looking at these rankings, is going to be a Tyler Lockett. So we have Tyler Lockett ranked as wide receiver 23. And with Lockett, it's a simple problem. While, yes, he finishes as the wide receiver 12 last year, and this is someone that is playing attached to one of my favorite quarterbacks that has been extremely efficient over the past decade, I'm just a little bit worried about the volatility. And I will say that the majority of fantasy drafters, I think, overrate consistency at the wide receiver position. They overrate the impact that playing those volatile players have. Someone like a Will Fuller that you know they're going to have just low week, low week, low week. And then, my God, they go into the stratosphere. And on underdog, you love that because it's best ball. So he automatically slides into your starting lineup. But in a regular league, it's a little bit harder here. Now, what I will say is we go through and we look at week 7 where he actually scores 53 points in that 1 week. And if you take that week away, you actually have Tyler Lockett falling from the wide receiver 12 in fantasy to the wide receiver 27. And this is more so in line with what we had in 2018 and 2019, where in 2018, he finishes as the wide receiver 24. In 2019, he finishes as the wide receiver 22. So you see the spike up this past year, but it's mainly driven off of just 1 week and 1 week only. So I want to go through and say that I think it's more likely than not that Tyler Lockett's more so a low-end wide receiver 2 rather than a low-end wide receiver 1. So yeah, I know Tyler Lockett's going a lot higher than this in drafts right now, but we are going to have him ranked as wide receiver 23. So now our next receiver that we are going to be ranking at wide receiver 24 is going to surprise a lot of people. Laviska Shenault. Let's get him out here. Okay, so with Laviska Shenault, guys, this was previously DJ Chark, but DJ Chark suffers the finger injury. He has surgery, and now Shenault is getting all the snaps at wide receiver 1 in training camp in the preseason. Don't talk to me about Marvin Jones. Laviska Shenault is a significantly better player. Now, I understand that with Laviska, it's going to be so hard to evaluate him based on his rookie year because he was literally playing on the worst team in football. I mean, I don't think you can hold that against him. So what we have to do is we have to go back to Colorado and try to reevaluate him as a prospect coming into the NFL. And we look at him, he has traditional size to be an alpha receiver. To go along with this, he was a very productive early on in his collegiate career, which if you read our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, you will see why that's so important for these prospects. And he was an elite level athlete. Now, if you look at his combine numbers from 2020, you're not going to see that, but he had a groin injury at that combine. But if you look at the advanced analytics for his top end speed that he had in college, you can see that this is an elite level athlete that's also used in creative ways. He's used in jet motion. He's used as a wildcat quarterback sometimes. And here with Shenault, I just think that this is going to be an overall offense that we're wanting to make a bet on when you have Trevor Lawrence coming in. This should be an improved offensive line now that they are returning all 5 starters. So I want to go out there. I want to bet on Trevor Lawrence. I want to bet on his receiver 1 that we think has a ton of talent and a ton of potential. So we're going to go with Laviska Shenault as our wide receiver 24. Now, thank you, my dudes. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And yeah, that's all I got for you. And have a great day. We have had the craziest amount of support over on Patreon. Thank you, Colby, Ryan, Spencer, Seb, It's Easy, David, Justin, Christian,